This is Dundasville Court, a scheme right on the edge of Glasgow city centre, and I've come here to find out the answer to a question that's been plaguing me since the election. This scheme is managed by Queen's Cross Housing Association. Before they took over, it was managed by Glasgow Housing Association, and before that it was City Council Housing. But the reason I've come here is that in the Westminster general election, where I stood as a candidate, and this was a scheme part of Glasgow North ward, there was a ballot box in the scheme where only 10% of those who were eligible to vote did so. So I'm going to chap a few doors and find out what's going on here, why this disconnection with politics, and also what are the burning issues in this community, and is the issue that the local residents don't feel included in the political process, that their issues are not being listened to or addressed, or is there something else going on? Now, I'm fairly familiar with this scheme. I canvassed it extensively in the independence referendum with both the Radical Independence campaign and also just as an activist with a number of comrades, basically just trying to persuade people to vote independence. And at the time, this was pro-independence, but only narrowly so, with a lot of scepticism from older community. But it did feel quite politically engaged in a lot of the issues. That wasn't the case in the election, so I'm going to go into one of the blocks where I think the ballot box with the lowest turnout is located. There are actually two ballot boxes in this scheme, so it's quite sizable. But this ballot box that had the 10% turnout, that had over 500 electors and only around 50 voted. I'm at the top of the tower here, and I just spoke to a young gentleman, didn't want to be on camera, asking why he didn't vote. And he explained that he doesn't follow politics and he doesn't really care about independence one way or another. So it's not something he's interested in. So that's number one conversation. So I'm with a gentleman here. What was your name, sir? William. And I was asking because this area had some of the lowest turnout in Glasgow North. Only about 10% of people voted. So I was asking William, why was it that you didn't vote, or you didn't feel that politics represented?
Just right, yeah.
Yeah. So is it that what would be the main concerns that you have in life?
Sorry?
What would be your main concerns in life? What would you want to see changed?
Fine. To be honest, fine.
Everything's fine. Well, thanks for your time, William. I appreciate it. Many thanks. I'm with a gentleman here who did vote.
Yes.
What was your name, sir?
William Master.
So, William here, and you voted?
For Keir Starmer.
Voted for Keir Starmer. So you got a good result then?
I did, yes.
Yeah, you got the one you wanted. Well, democracy works for you. Let's see why it's not working for other people.
I don't know why.
Thanks again, William. I appreciate your time.
No bother. Thanks.
I'm working my way down the block here, and I just met a lady who had just moved in. So she did cast a vote, but in her previous address. And maybe I turn her and say, is one of the reasons for lots of people moving in and out. Maybe that is one of the reasons for the very low turnout in Dundasville. But let's crack on. A very brief conversation there with a woman who always votes and always votes SNP. So she was on the phone and wanted to get away as quickly as possible, but someone who always votes. Talking there with a younger lady and an older gentleman, both of whom always vote, and the younger lady noted that the low turnout was quite stark. She'd seen it before, found it somewhat interesting, and their analysis was that there's a lot of older people in this community who don't have the ability to get out anymore. I also spoke to a gentleman on a student visa who didn't have the right to vote, and his view was that perhaps people were too lazy in the area. So we'll crack on and see what more information we can find. I had a longish conversation there with an older gentleman who was happy to talk, but didn't want to be filmed because he said he didn't want the publicity. But the point he was making is that he votes and continues to do so because his parents had instilled the civic duty in him that he should do it. but increasingly he feels cynical, and he said that he doesn't trust 95% of what comes out of politicians' mouths, and agreed that everything seems to be getting worse and has been getting worse for a very long time. I expressed that from my perspective, someone who's 41, things have been getting worse for almost all my life, and he said, well, that's it, and young people can see that too, and that's why they're not bothering to vote, whereas older people are still voting because of a sense of civic duty.
A gentleman there who grew up in Postle Park, and he said, nobody cares anymore, mate, nobody cares. And he said, nobody cares about areas like this. And then I asked him, well, that's true of a lot of other areas as well. And as mentioned, Postle Park, turnout was a bit higher than it is here. And he said, well, I think maybe it's immigrants. And I think there might be some element of truth in that. And there's quite a lot of people who are not here for long term in attendance. There's a lot of Deliveroo drivers in this scheme, I think because of its proximity to the city centre. So that's maybe part of the story, but I don't think it's the whole part of the story. I just spoke with a gentleman there who's 84 and has some mobility issues. He cast his vote via a postal vote, and I asked him what would he ascribe the low turnout here to, and he said again it is old age pensioners who have mobility issues. And I said, well, you got yourself a postal vote. And he said, but the thing is, I sorted that a long time ago. So that's an interesting point. One lady there took great exception to being asked the question why this area had a low turnout in comparison with other areas across Glasgow North, adamantly insisting that she had voted. So clearly some people take great pride in the fact that they participate in the democratic process. I spoke to a younger gentleman across from her who said that he wasn't on the register, but I asked him to give an opinion. He was in the middle of something, so he couldn't do it on camera, but he said, they're all old, mate, they're all old. Which is definitely the feedback that I've been getting most of. But that's true of a number of other places as well, so interesting. I think, in summary, there really is no substitute for face-to-face communication, and as that little vignette survey of a number of people in this area that recorded the lowest turnout in Glasgow North shows, there's not one simple answer. Surely, yes, there are issues with an older demographic are less able to move about, less ambulatory than they used to be. But as the 84-year-old gentleman I spoke to demonstrates, there's no barrier for receiving a postal vote. So it's clear that the political parties are not engaging on that point, and everywhere, everyone I spoke to mentioned the lack of connection between neighbourhoods like this and the political class and their concerns. And I think we can all understand that. But for people on the left, like myself, who would want to see working class concerns more front and central in the political process, the conversations I had where, like a young woman said, I'm not interested in hearing any more about this, mate. Those disconnections from politics, or the young lady who said that she knew nothing about politics and felt inadequate to even comment on why she knew nothing about politics. They demonstrate that we really need mass engagement. The only thing that is going to change society, and in particular those of us who want to see independence and in a hurry to raise up working people and take hold of our common treasury for the advancement of our nation, we need to engage people who are disconnected on a massive scale, a truly epic scale. The number of conversations that will be required to turn this around is in the region of millions. So there's no substitute for face-to-face communication, and we need to get busy with it right now.